What is the effect of the Afghan withdrawal going to do to global terrorism?
Yeah, I think that's the right question to ask. I mean, there's a lot in that, and I'll try to unpack it just as succinctly as I can. And here's some things I think that are worthy of considering as people make up their own mind of what, does Afghanistan really matter in the scheme of things? This little, dusty ass country in Southwest Asia that no one has really heard about until 9/11. I think that it does. It matters to everyday Americans. It matters to people who are raising their kids. And whether you have memory of 9/11 or not, here's why I think it matters and what the impact is going to be on global terrorism. First of all, we may think that we're done with al-Qaeda and ISIS, but they're not done with us. The enemy, we're taught in special operations, always has a vote in the outcome of the plan. You may make the best plan in the world, but the enemy gets a vote on how that happens. And in this case, global terror groups like al-Qaeda, ISIS, they have a narrative that drives them to action that they follow for centuries, right? We may come and go with political polarization and political administrations. Our narrative changes, our goals change. It's not true for al-Qaeda and ISIS. They have a goal to reestablish the Islamic Caliphate. They have a goal to unseat and destroy the apostate governments of the Middle East and the great Satan in the West. That does not change, right? They may get decimated and experience degradation like what happened with the 20-year war in Afghanistan and the ISIS campaign in Syria, but they do not lose the focus on their narrative, and they are very patient and very committed. What you're seeing right now in Afghanistan is a complete return to where we were pre-9/11. And I'm getting this firsthand from former Afghan special operators who fought al-Qaeda and ISIS for years. Also from Legend, the Afghan-American Intel NCO from our Army who's been in country reporting as well. They're all saying the same thing. Al-Qaeda, Lieutenant General Sami Sadat, the last commander of Afghan special operations before the country fell. I've had conversations with him. He's getting ready to go back into the country and try to mobilize the commandos as part of the resistance, which is encouraging to me. But he's saying the same things. Al-Qaeda has completely reconstituted. The strike on Ayman al-Zawahri, who was the number 2 under bin Laden and then the number 1, shows us that he was standing on the porch of an affluent Kabul neighborhood in broad daylight.
Yeah.
He was there as a guest of the Taliban. Gosh darn it, another Afghan special operations general recently talked at a conference that I was at, and he said that the Taliban are actually issuing passports and visas to foreign fighters to live comfortably in Afghanistan. We know for a fact that foreign fighters from Syria, Iraq, al-Qaeda foreign fighters from North Africa, and even Southeast Asia are back in Afghanistan training openly on former Afghan army bases in Helmand and Kandahar.
Why do you think they're amassing in Afghanistan from all these other countries?
Well, it's the perfect safe haven. If you're going to have a global terror threat projection, if you're going to fulfill on that narrative of bringing unprecedented violence to the West like you saw on 9/11, 2001, you have to have a safe haven that gives you the ability in an unfettered, uninterrupted way to plan, prepare, project, train, and refit. And Afghanistan is the ultimate safe haven in that regard because their government is an Islamist government. They have a soft spot in their heart for anything that is anti-American, that is terrorist in nature. They support it, and they're showing that openly right now. Now, even though we have a Doha agreement that says if you do that, we're coming back in, that what we're seeing from this administration is no indication that that will happen at all, except these over-the-horizon strikes like we did with Zawahiri. Great, we got him, and kudos to the intelligence community for making that happen. But Shawn, we saw over-the-horizon strikes when we were trying to get bin Laden before 9/11. Like, there's just no substitute for the ground intelligence network. You know this better than anybody. And there's no substitute for a partner force who can resist at a local level and be that antibody. Both of those were abandoned wholesale in Afghanistan on August 15th, and they're still somewhat intact. And these volunteer groups have manifests of Afghan commandos, KKA, intelligence officials that, yes, want to get out of the country, but if they were extradited or brought out of the country, they could become huge assets for countering violent extremism. But the bottom line is, I think we are a couple of years out from a catastrophic attack that's going to come from this unfettered safe haven, and I'll leave you with this scenario. Let's assume that 2 to 3 years from now, we suffer a strike in the U.S., and it's on par with 9/11. And I don't think that's a stretch, considering the level of freedom of action that al-Qaeda and ISIS-K are being afforded in Afghanistan, right? So let's just assume that an attack happens here, and it is catastrophic. And out of the ashes, and when the dust clears, you have an America that is reminiscent of 9/12/2001. The country music songs are playing, the Budweiser commercials are going strong, the yellow ribbons are on the trees, except this time it's, your son and mine that are loaded up on these airplanes, on these C-17s, and are deployed over for a retribution operation in Afghanistan to seek vengeance and oust this group that just did this. Now, last time, you had members of the special operations community that went in under cover of darkness, and they linked up with resistance groups like the Northern Alliance and the Pashtun tribes in the south and the east. But what if this time, when our youth are going over, laying in wait are dozens, if not hundreds, of former Afghan commandos, special forces, who are in ragtag clothing, but they still have the kit. They still have the M4s with optics and the night vision goggles. And they're pissed off because they watched their kids starve to death over 3 years. They've been co-opted by ISIS or al-Qaeda, and they're ready for some payback. And the very partner force that we trained and supported and bled with could be the people that we're fighting the next time we go back in there.
That is not a pretty picture.
No. And I think, what a terrible post 9/11 testimony that would be to have to give.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes, so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.